Hey fellow enthusiast, if you want to know how the Lanham family home brews our own kombucha, then this video is for you.
Here we go.
Hey fellow enthusiasts, this is Tommy Lanham.
And I'm Tammy. And I'm Apollonia.
And we are on a mission to break the monotony of the mundane and the mediocre by bringing as much enthusiasm to as many families as we possibly can.
And at this point, I am going to kick my husband out of the kitchen, so we'll see you later. There are 5 things you need to make kombucha. Filtered water, black tea bags. 100 bags cost me $1.97.
Money saver.
I hate to spend money, y'all. You know this. And then we also have our sugar. I need 2 cups for 2 gallons. But don't forget your SCOBY and your starter. Okay? This is what came off of our last batch of kombucha, and we added into this batch. I pulled it off before we poured it into our jars for the second fermentation. So this is the part that you will need to help grow the bacteria. And we're going to use 10 tea bags for 2 gallons. Now you can also make this in a 1 gallon batch, which I have been doing. We were running out, and what happens when we run out of kombucha? This is actually my very first time doing this in a 2 gallon batch, so I'm just doubling my regular recipe. You also need a lint-free kitchen towel that you can put over top of your brew while it sits. Add our sugar to our water. Make sure you turn off the heat.
Oh.
Add your sugar and she's going to stir it in. We have taken 10 tea bags and then we're going to lay these over in this mixture of sugar water. We're going to remove this off the heat and lay the tea bags into the water. That's going to sit there until it comes back to room temperature. It usually takes about an hour. I don't even know how much this is. It's a soup pot. It's about 1 inch or 2 from the top. We filled it up with filtered water and we did 10 tea bags. Now we're going to squeeze those tea bags. It's really important to have this at a good temperature before you put the SCOBY in, because too cold will kill your SCOBY, but too hot will kill your SCOBY. And I'm going to fill it up, the rest of it, up to where the jar begins to curve. Then you're going to want to uncover this beautiful SCOBY.
Gross.
It's not gross.
It is.
It is living. Remember that. I'm going to stick my hand in to make sure that it's a good temperature before I put this in. And yes, it is. So then I'm going to put in my SCOBY. Look how thick that is, y'all.
That's disgusting.
This is what makes your kombucha. Be
It's
nice
gross.
to it. It stands for Symbiotic Culture of Bacteria and Yeast. SCOBY. Now, sometimes the SCOBY will float across the top, sometimes it will sink down, sometimes it'll lay on its side. Doesn't matter. If it does float up to the top, then you can stick your hand in and kind of press it down every few days just to make sure it doesn't get dried out. Now this is the tea that was left over from my last batch, and this is called the starter. So I'm going to pour that in. We're going to move our jar to its resting place.
Is there a
Oh my gosh, it's heavy! I put the Christmas lights.
I love Christmas lights.
Wrap my Christmas lights around it. It's a way to keep your kombucha at the correct temperature so that it will ferment the way it's supposed to. Now, I will slide that back into the corner. You gotta have the right bottles. So this type of bottle, it's a thicker glass. These bottles are made for pressure from the inside to push out. Mason jars are specifically formed so that the pressure coming into them doesn't make them explode. That's why they're canning jars, so that they can withstand the pressure pushing down on them. These jars are specifically made for the pressure pushing out because we're forcing our own carbonation. Now these are just recycled ones that I have bought. I also have brewing bottles. They have a lockdown lid with a gasket on top, and it will lock down and it keeps that carbonation inside your bottle. But I will tell you, I actually prefer using the recycled bottles that we got at the grocery store. Now this is GT's brand, GT''S, and then I match the GT's lid. It's actually embossed on the lid. These are just different ones that friends and family have saved for me when they drink it. And they have just typical smooth lids. You need to match them up. The first time I did this, I did not match them up. And it doesn't create the seal that you need. It has to have that seal to it because you're hoping to build up the carbonation. All right, are we ready?
Ready.
Always make sure you've washed your hands really well.
I washed my hands.
This is your SCOBY. The more of this that you do, the thicker it will get. But that is a very good, very healthy SCOBY. You don't want to wash your utensils or anything else that you're using with antibacterial soap because this is bacteria and we don't want to kill it. So this is the good stuff. This is the stuff that makes it so very healthy for your body. I'm going to take some of this out. This is my starter for my next batch. This is the next batch. Okay. So I'm just taking out about anywhere from a half a cup to a cup of liquid. And I'm going to set this over to the side. And you will always want to make sure that this is in either a glass or ceramic porcelain type jar. You cannot brew your kombucha in plastic. Now I filter it because some of the SCOBY, sometimes pieces fall out, sometimes it grows pieces of yeast that grow down into the bottle and drop off, and I don't want that in my final kombucha. As I get close to the bottom, I'm going to kind of swirl some of that extra sediment. So this has been sitting on my counter for approximately 10 days. And today I'm going with my GT's jars. They're my favorite ones. You can add pieces of fruit and we can also add fruit juice. And I will add 2 ounces to 4 ounces, depends on how strong I want it, to each glass of the juice before I add the tea. If I only do grape, I will add about 3 ounces of grape and then finish the rest off with the tea. But sometimes I like to mix them. My favorite so far has been the grape and cherry juice, but I'm out of cherry juice this week. Oh no. It was really good, wasn't it?
It's really good.
When I do 2 juices, I only do 2 ounces of each. I'll do 2 ounces of grape, 2 ounces of cherry, and then I fill up the rest of the bottle with the tea. But my favorite of all time,
Pineapple.
I'm gonna add 3 ounces of the pineapple juice because I'm only adding 1 juice. Well, that was fast. So now that we've got our juices, we just have the 3 ounces of pineapple juice in these and 3 ounces of grape juice in these. We're going to top off the rest of these bottles.
I walked out of my room and there was kombucha all over the ceiling and I asked what happened. Apparently they'd opened one up and it exploded and my dad had to go take a shower because there was kombucha all over him and it was all over the ceiling.
Now that was just a kombucha explosion. It wasn't a glass explosion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was hilarious.
Glad you thought it was funny. I fill it up to the bottom of where the cap comes. This, see how it's right there at the very bottom. I hand tighten very tight. Now, see how flat that lid is? You let these sit for 3 days without refrigeration. Refrigeration will stop the fermentation. You will not get the carbonation anymore after that. But see how flat that is right now? It will actually bubble up just a little bit. When you go to turn it upside down and lay it flat on the counter, it won't sit flat. It'll wobble. That's when you know it's ready for refrigeration. So even though we're adding fruit juice, which is sometimes very high in natural sugar, you're feeding the bacteria and it will eat the sugar away. So your sugar content is going to be super, super low. Okay?
Really healthy.
It's really healthy, yes. They keep reminding me of that so that they can have more and more. So I'm going to set these jars right up against those Christmas lights, but I'm going to kind of encircle the big jar, and then I'm going to take what's left of the Christmas lights, just this little section here, and we're going to weave those in and out of some of these loose jars that we just added. Voila. So in 3 days, we're going to check for that hump in the lid. Hey guys, I'm checking back in with you on day 3 of our second fermentation. So after we made the tea, we put it into the large jar. Then we let that sit for 10 days. After the 10 days, we put it into the jars with the fruit flavors. And then you wait 3 days. before you put it in the refrigerator. Remember, refrigeration stops the fermentation. So you don't want to put it in the refrigerator until you see a bulge in that cap. Okay, so let's check in. There is a bulge on the top. See the caps? They're bulging. That means that there is carbonation inside of these jars and they are ready